Hello, this is Matt Slick from the Matt Slick Live podcast, where I defend the Christian faith and lay out our foundations of the truth of God's Word. Your chosen Truth Network podcast is starting in just a few seconds. Enjoy it, share it, but most of all, thank you for listening and for choosing the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network.
Coming to you from an entrenched barricade deep in the heart of central North Carolina. Masculine Journey After Hours. A time to go deeper and be more transparent on the topic covered on this week's broadcast. So sit back and join us on this adventure. The Masculine Journey After Hours starts here now.
Welcome to Masculine Journey After Hours, and we are glad to have you with us this week. And we are talking about a topic that's pretty, what would I say, current.
Yeah.
Like a current topic. Yeah, relevant. That's another word for it. Yeah. And so what are we talking about today, Andy?
Well, I thought that was David, but...
No. David's not current or relevant.
No. I think that's going to be on the...
Man, that was like...
the joyride right there.
You've been holding that in like for a while, haven't you?
No, he gave us a definition last time.
Oh, okay.
But our topic is on Independence Day or the 4th of July. We're, what is it, July 1st?
Yeah. Well,
we're doing that.
Independence Day is the 4th every year.
Right. No, that's not. I know that.
Oh, today's date. Okay, yeah, today's the 1st.
Yeah. So we're just, celebrating that by, bringing it to the remembrance of both from a natural standpoint, our natural freedom that we got when our country, broke away from England and declared their independence, their freedom. And how it relates to our spiritual freedom. I think it's just the struggle is somewhat similar as we discussed in the previous show, and we'll do again. But just to be coming from independent from these tyrannical forces, whether it's a natural person like King George, or whether it's Satan himself, that that desire within us to have freedom, both from a natural side and a spiritual side, is born within us. And it was, our independence came at a cost, and we've talked about that. We talked about that in Memorial Day show. But just the fondness that I have for that, just that realization that we're free, and that there was a cost paid for that, but that we truly can be independent of Satan and dependent on God, whether it's from a natural or spiritual standpoint.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't have a lot of English listeners at this point, because you may have started World War III by comparing, their king to Satan, but that's okay. You say tomato, I say tomato.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I didn't exactly do that.
They do have a new king now.
They do have a new king.
Yeah. Things have changed.
The queen was a little better than
King
his king,
Chuck,
I think.
isn't it? King Chuck? No, Charles.
Charles.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So anyway,
But at the time, there was that idea of really the liberty that we desired. I really believe that God. There's the quote that God was. Sorry, I'm having a problem. Israel was the first country that God called to be His own, and America was the first country He chose them. That it was the first country that really chose God. I don't know God's hand was working all that, but we set up all our laws. Everything that we did was so that we can have freedom to worship and serve Him. And He called the Israelites out first, but we kind of came over here and said, okay, we're going to found our nation on God. And I know He was all up in it, but just something to think about.
Well, thank you. Well, Kenny, you actually have the first clip of this show. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about your clip.
Yes, I picked out a song that...
Really?
Yeah. Being a musician, I usually lean towards them more than movies.
Yeah, a little bit.
Shocker, Kenny, shocker.
Yeah. So y'all getting used to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this song, I think, puts kind of the finger on what they went for us. Because they said if we don't stand together, we're gonna hang independently. And that's the same way, really, in the church we need to be. If we don't stand together and put our shields together and our hearts together, and like guys work hard to have a band of brothers, people that can kind of see different points and bring them into you. And that's one thing I loved about this show is the different points that come in and perspectives that, because when we're together, like the 300 was in the earlier show, when we put our shields together, we can stand up against a much mightier force.
Right.
Because the force that's in behind us.
Yeah.
And all. But I'll let you play this clip because it kind of reflects on our times right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, here we go.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me.
Yeah, good song there, Kenny.
Well, thank you. Because it's the truth. You know, we got to bond together. If we don't have each other's backs, what do we have?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Rodney, you want to add something?
No, not on that one.
Well, you grabbed the microphone and then you looked right at me.
A comment that I should not make.
Okay, it is after hours, but yeah, you probably, but we'll go with the Holy Spirit on that one.
Okay.
I'll have use a little discretion that I don't usually use.
Okay, that's good.
Well, thank you.
That's good. So we do have another clip I'll play here in a minute, but thank you. Now, Stand By Me. Now, when you were talking about, you know, how strong we are, I was thinking about where it talks about, you know, the rope of three strands, you know, and how strong it is, right? Right. And so what are our three strands? You know, when you have something standing by you, obviously one of those has to be God.
Yes.
You know, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, you know, kind of all together. We'll treat them as one, right? But, you know, what's the third cord? Right? You got God.
Yes.
Yes. Those people that God puts around you, right?
The church.
The church.
Other believers.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Allies.
The believers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The real church, not what we sometimes call the church, but
Yeah.
fellow believers. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you. Any other thoughts before I get into the next clip? Anyone want to add anything? Bueller? Okay.
Well, the fight for independence,
Yeah.
you know, it still goes on day by day for all of us.
It does.
Until we realize that, like Jesus said, take up your cross daily and follow me. He'll lead us through these battles. Do we let him? That's my battle every morning. Am I really taking it up for him or taking it up for me? Because that's my real battleground.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is definitely.
But I can't find that freedom in the Spirit until I really submit to the Spirit to lead me.
Yeah, freedom comes from letting go.
Yes, yes.
Right.
You surrender to win. You know,
Yeah.
that the flesh don't understand that, the people in the flesh, but the Spirit understands that. 'Cause
Right.
But then we get now his way to really develop that patience, develop that love, them true fruits that satisfy our hearts.
Thank you. Danny, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked about being born into this battle and this war. But I think the phrase that comes out of the Core Desires talk is we're born into a love story set in the midst of war. I think is how it's said.
Yes.
And I think that's important in what we're talking about because, you know, God does love us and he hadn't just thrown us to the wolves, so to speak. You know, it is him pursuing us in the midst of battles and wounds and that kind of thing. And so we are his bride. And it's kind of hard to picture this group of guys as a bride, but I'm just saying, you know, that takes faith at like beyond measure right there. But
David, why'd you get the uncomfortable smile on your face when he said that?
Just the picture of you in a dress. I was
say
just
yes
like,
to the dress.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was going to be orange, like your shirt, or, you know.
You know, I hear you say that so often, it's wearing out.
I'm trying to figure out why he's picturing that. To be honest with you, I don't understand that.
It's a common conversation we have to have.
Sleep.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
He is sitting in Robbie's chair.
He is sitting in Robert's chair. That's true.
True.
that went south quick.
It did go south. You know, that's my fault, probably.
Probably not. I started that.
Well, you probably did.
You did start it, Danny.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that one. All right, so we'll go ahead and go to this next clip. This is actually my clip, and it's from the movie Independence Day. And so this is a speech that the president's giving. And if you haven't seen Independence Day, it's like, I don't know, 20-some years old now. So I think you've probably seen it. And it probably plays every 4th of July, I'm guessing. So if you know.
24 hours, I think.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you got a chance in 3 days. But yeah. So what's happening is it's
like the Christmas story of around Christmas time.
It is,
on repeat.
Probably on TBS, 24 hours, as you said, David. Yeah. But no, the movie is about the Earth is being attacked by aliens. And so the Earth has to band together to fight against them because it's an overwhelming enemy that they're up against, right? So, bless you, individually, they're not going to be able to make it, but collectively, they have to work together. All right, and so let's go ahead and listen to what the president has to say, and we'll kind of come back and talk about it.
Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July. And you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Well, that should fire you up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it sounded pretty convincing, Dave. Good. It sounded convincing, David. A couple things about that clip that really kind of hit me. First of all, when I look around Christianity, there's more segregation than there is unity. And as long as the enemy's still able to do that, our chances of standing together to fight against a common enemy doesn't work. Lincoln once said, a house divided shall not stand, right? Well, the church divided won't stand either. And the enemy's been really good at dividing the church, right? And it's not just dividing us from non-Christians, but from each other. We want to argue about the color of the carpet or the pews or whether to not have pews or what type of music or all the things that at the end of the day, does it really even matter when we're facing annihilation? We're facing an enemy that Jesus very clearly says comes to seek, kill, and destroy, right? But I live my life most days like that's an afterthought. And that's what this clip really meant to me, was a reminder of, I am facing that battle. Yeah, I'm in a love story, and I'm very grateful I'm in a love story, but there's a lot of war going on around it, right? And I need to rise up and fight better, for the people in my life, for my own heart, to try to win that battle one step at a time and look more towards unity than diversity, amongst other people. That's what I do love about this group. We all come from different church denominations, church backgrounds, things like that. We don't have a lot of common things from the standpoint when you look at Christian pedigree. We're not from the same thing, right? I mean, we're kind of like mutts. Yeah, but we are. But God uses this group to really help each other first and foremost. And from that love from one another, that support from one another, hopefully help others, right? Kind of find their way along, just because we're just a little bit maybe further ahead than some, saying, hey, come on, we can do this. And there's people ahead of us saying, hey, come on, we can do this. Right? That's what Christianity is supposed to look like. I think I'm probably, if you've seen the movie, I'm probably more of the Randy Quaid character.
I was going to say, Cousin Eddie was the hero in this movie.
He was a hero, that life would say, you're maybe not got the the training, the pedigree. Again, I hate to use that term, but to do this. But God doesn't look at those things. He looks at the heart.
Yeah.
And he says, no, you're my warrior, and I have you for this specific battle, and you were uniquely made for this battle, right? And at the end of the day, you're the only one that can step up and fight that battle with the help of your friends and your family and those other people, not on your own, but first and foremost with God and with the people I put in your life to support you. So I'm off of my soapbox and on a tirade there, but anything you guys want to add to what we're just talking about?
No, I just, right there, it was for such a time as this.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that same thing. There's a time he put us here for this reason. The next generation, every generation puts down the next generation.
Right.
Because, they're not like us and they're just this, they're just that. And there's a lot of truth that comes in that because stereotypes are made from observation of what's going on. But yet, God is putting his people there for that reason, for that time. And we should be looking for what we are to do and say, okay, God, you've got the next generation, and not to be also worried all the time about every little petty thing.
Yeah, agreed.
See, I think Rodney touched on a little bit earlier, is just understanding that spiritual warfare that's going on around us. You know, I've been in church pretty much all my life, walked with God, and until I came into this ministry, I'd never heard that I've made agreements with Satan. You know, it's just something that I've done. You know, and
Same.
and when you look at it from that aspect, it really adds new light to it. You know, what am I doing here? But it's also, there's so many, Christians, professing Christians, that don't really acknowledge that we have a true enemy. I mean, many times you hear them say, "Oh, this happened because of God," but they don't recognize that we're fighting a battle. Yeah. That the enemy is looking to, kill and devour. I mean, it's crazy. Once we recognize that we have the enemy, what he's doing in our life, then it gives us an opportunity through Christ to really fight that battle the way Christ wants us to.
Yeah, a couple of the greatest tools the enemy uses is, first and foremost, which we talked about on here a lot, is I'm not here. It's just you and God. But one of the worst things he's done is convince a lot of Christians out there that everything that happens, God says, I want it to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Now, God can use everything, and Scripture does say that, right? It can use everything to his glory when we let him do that. But it doesn't mean that he ordained everything to happen that happens, right? When you look at the choice of free will, right? And then people's free will impacts other people, right? And so what I choose to do with my free will impacts my kids greatly. It impacts my coworkers. It impacts you guys. Right. When what we do with what we're given impacts others. And when we always think that that's, God must have meant that to happen or this wouldn't have happened. Well, that's a really faulty theology.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of, I think there's lots of times God's heart is breaking and he's, heartbroken over, what his kids are going through. Right. And if we think otherwise, man, how cruel of a God would that be? When a child dies or, there's a tragedy or whatever may happen, you look at that and go, wow, God's heart's breaking in that as well.
Jesus prayed a lot for our unity. And, we talked about unity a few minutes ago, and that, Lord, let them be one as we are one. Because, obviously, if it wasn't a problem, he wouldn't have prayed for it. So, and the enemy does kill, steal, and destroy, and he divides. And I think if I've got I know Robbie's going to cringe, but in the Greek, I know this is a Hebrew show, but
he doesn't touch the Greek. You're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm good.
Well, he does with salad every Tuesday.
Yeah, Greek salad. Yeah, and olives.
Every single Tuesday.
And olives. Yeah. The word for division is diablos, which means devil.
Yeah.
So where you see division, you can smell a devil.
Yeah. Part of my battle growing up as a kid, when I first accepted Christ, I was probably one of those kids that did it because I was afraid. I was doing it because I was fearful of, I didn't want to, end up in, fire and brimstone kind of thing, more than I was pulled to God.
Fire and church, man.
Yeah, it was very much a fire and brimstone church that I grew up in. And, looking back, and I just was kind of having that revelation when you were talking about it earlier, Rodney, that's probably more of my story was the case. And then what was really the worst thing about that is my church never talked about spiritual warfare. Never did. I didn't know it existed. And so first time I got hit with it, and when you grow up with a, philosophy of it's just God and I on the stage and God's not going to mess up. It's just like, wow, you thought you were a Christian, but look how horrible you really are. And he just would pile on and pile on. And honestly, that went on for years until I read Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
And we're talking from teenager to 2002, roughly. And I was born in 1963, so that was.
I say it was a really long time ago.
That was much longer than you've been around, and that was really tough, and so growing up, not knowing about this battle, was out there, but feeling beat up by it every day.
Yep.
And just feeling, well, that's just me. It's just me messing up yet again. Or not knowing about agreements, or not knowing about things, and I'm not downplaying churches. Churches play a vital role, and most churches, kind of stay in a theme, right? They're a grace-oriented church, or they're this oriented church, and they kind of stick with the flavor of this one kind of area, right? Or we're going to love others well. One of the things as you were talking, Danny, Jesus, talked a lot about unity, but the one command he gave us when he left was love one another.
Yeah,
right. He could have told us lots of things, but I think he knew that that's what we were going to struggle with the most. Is truly loving one another, Christian, non-Christian, whatever that looks like.
I mean, it's almost taboo, like as you're talking about with the spiritual warfare, talking in churches and stuff. I know I grew up Lutheran, and I can tell you, I mean, of course, the Bible verses were read about the armor and all that, but I mean, we never really talked about. I mean, some of the stuff I just learned about in boot camp with you guys, like, there's a target band on my bag. Yeah, those arrows hurt, and they're pretty low sometimes, and it's in spots you don't really want to hit.
Could anybody relate to Onward Christian Soldiers Marching us to War? No, not really.
Well, I sang it in Vacation Bible School.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And
I heard you're singing. I don't know.
I didn't say I sang it well. I said I sang it.
Make a joyful noise.
Yeah,
it wasn't joyful.
It was a noise.
But going back to your point about the larger story, it says in Galatians 4:8-9, formerly when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that by nature are not God's. But now that you have come to know God, or rather to be known by God, how can you turn back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world whose slaves you want to be once more? And that's one of the things we have to remember about our independence, is that we need to maintain that independence. The enemy would love to come back and take that from us. That was the story in the Revolution, is that they wanted to pull anyone that was on the Patriots. I mean, you see it in the movie, The Patriot. They go after the people there and try to scare them back into, no, we don't want this. It's not worth fighting for. And the enemy would love to get us bound back up in the same place that he did. And I love that scripture because it pretty much spells it out there.
Yeah, the enemy tends to fall into the same type of things, when he's dealing with individuals, and we've talked about it on the show in the past. But, the first one is, I'm not here, right? And so he likes to play the absentee role. He likes to do that well. And when he can't get away with that anymore, then he slips into intimidation. I'm going to overwhelm you until you can't take it anymore. And then eventually he'll get into negotiation. If you just leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, kind of thing. And he's a liar. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't mean any of that, And so as soon as we start taking the bait, we're already done again. And as you were talking, Andy, we face, there's a lot against us. You have the world, the enemy, and the old self, right? The flesh, and those are hard to keep killed off. Or keep away in your life, to keep them at arm's length. Anyway, it's hard to do. And there's so many times I honestly feel like the character Cypher in The Matrix. You're the one that says, I know the steak isn't real, but it tastes real, and I'm going to eat it right now. And I don't like being like that, but there is a pull sometimes to say, what, I'm just tired of fighting this fight. I'm just wore out. I need a break. I need some time, and whatever that looks like, I don't care. And most of the time, honestly, it's stepping away from God. Right? The one thing that you need, the one anchor you need, is what he somehow convinces you to step away from. and you don't realize you're just jumping right out of the pan and into the fire.
Well, we've talked about false comforters here, those things that bring you relief instead of restoration, which would be God. And a lot of times those are the things that we tend to go to. To me, those are the very enslaving things, the things that you become dependent on instead of being dependent on God. And they're really placeholders. They're fillers. They're something that our flesh is attracted to that's going to displace God. And, that's what we're talking about here, is just trying to be free from that continually. Being mindful of it and understanding where we're at is half the battle, because a lot of us, we walked around ignorant to what was really going on, and at least you're aware of it now. Now I find myself catching myself a lot more of being tempted back into those things, but it's still, like you said, it's a battle every day, and the enemy's not stupid. He knows not how to not make a steak look like a steak. It's like shrouded in, there's deception there that makes it a little bit more difficult to see what's going on.
Yeah, and I promise if you look at your life, there's themes.
Yeah.
The way the enemy's attacked you. Now, he may disguise it for a little while, but when you keep looking at it closely, it'll still come back.
Yeah.
The things that he's always called you, he's still calling you. He may just use a different word, but it has the same meaning. Is that a synonym? I think that's the right thing, right? I'm looking around the wrong room here. I wish Jim was here.
I was about to say, I'm not Jim.
Yeah. Okay,
But I think, Andy, I think that's why it's important.
I need to get a thesaurus, Andy.
That's right.
Have a support system. Not only, you're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it with God, but then you have whether it's your church or your band of brothers to really kind of help pull you back in.
Fellow warriors that have been in similar battles that can say, "Hey, I've seen this before," and that's applicable to a battlefield. The same kind of thing. I've seen that battle. I was there. I was there. That was what I faced a month ago. This is how you handle it. So
yeah, and with our culture being very much a youth-driven culture, we tend to try to throw away the people that have the best advice. The sages that are out there, and we discount them, or we, kind of don't really lean into them the way we need to. And that's what's been great about this whole group, has been able to lean into people at one point that was much older than me. And as I've been in this group longer, I'm becoming more of one of the older ones.
Now you're like the older one.
That's right.
An older one, not the oldest one.
I didn't say oldest one. I said close to oldest one.
Well, no, I'm in the middle, upper middle, but still middle.
We're about to see a revolution going on right now.
But it's important to have your friends check you. You just called me, what? Was it 2 weeks ago, and said, "Hey, man, I'm just checking on you. I want to make sure you didn't check out." That's important to have, because the enemy's gonna steal that from you and be like, "Hey, nobody really cares about you, man. Don't." Yeah, they may say you're your friends, but you're at a spot that you have this all together. So
it's a good thing you're here tonight, or it's going to drive to your house. Anyway, I'm just kidding.
Good thing I moved.
Guys, thanks for listening to us this week, and we're going to talk more next week. We're going to talk on the topic of what are you doing this summer to restore your heart. And so we'll talk with you next week. Go to masculinejourney.org to register for the boot camp.
This is the Truth Network.